The Maple Leafs have sent down Fraser Minten, but did he do enough to get back up with the big club at some point? We'll discuss his situation and more on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode brought to you by the College Football Playoffs. The College Football Playoff is here, and you don't want to miss a moment of the action. The College Football Playoff presentation by Allstate begins with 4 first-round games, December 20th and 21st on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and Max. And for you Canadian viewers, I believe it's a TSM property as well. College football playoffs moved to 12 teams this year, Dave. So that's kind of interesting that they expanded the playoffs. Do you think that the NHL will ever expand the playoffs? Like we saw the NBA do it, the NFL has done it, the MLB has, literally every other sports league has expanded their playoffs except for the National Hockey League. Do you think at some point we see it happen?
Well, you would think that with expanding to adding 2 more teams, it would have brought up the conversation to expand the playoffs more. But any talk about changing the playoff format has been shot down refusely by both Batman and Bill Daly. So I don't think it's going to happen now, but I think, with the idea of them wanting to look to expand to more teams, that they'll want to do that. And I think it makes sense. I also just think the current playoff format stinks. Because literally,
what stinks about it? What stinks about it? Is it the divisional, like the way you want?
Yeah, it's just stale. I already know who the Leafs are going to likely play in the first round. Probably going to be Boston or Tampa. Gee, how many years have the Leafs played Boston or Tampa in the playoffs?
Let me see. Playoffs ended today. Go ahead.
It's just, I understand, you have to play good team. Has nothing to do about who they play. It's the fact that the whole point of the playoffs is, you get to see things a little differently. Like with the old format, with the 1v8, there are a wide range of possibilities of who a team could play. Now, if we did the 1v8, I guarantee maybe there's a chance the Leafs still play those teams. But at least then it's still a little bit more balanced. It's not more so the first round. It's like, okay, you play this team in the first round. Now in the second round, you're still in the division.
Yeah.
No, it should
now you play Florida.
What's that?
It's like, congrats. Now you play Florida.
It's just like, no, it should be based on, if I'm the top seed in the conference, the prize or the reward for that is I get the lower seed. That's how every other league does it. Yeah. But no, the NHL is trying to get these divisional rivalries, or in some cases, and we know this is probably true, saving on travel or not having teams do the travel that you see, right? Well, in my opinion, it just gets, you lose a little bit of luster in the regular season because you've already kind of know what's going to happen for the playoffs. So fan bases check out.
Oh yeah, by the trade deadline, like you could pretty much tell, like every year you could tell who the Leafs are going to be playing.
Yeah,
like by deadline, it's pretty much been okay. The Leafs are going to finish either second or third, so the only thing they're fighting for is home ice advantage, basically. But it's been all right. They're going to finish second or third and play one of basically either Florida, Boston, Tampa, one of those 3 teams, and it's been a lock guarantee for the last 5 years.
Yeah. So I do think that if you're serious about bringing excitement to the playoffs, embrace something different. They tried this. In my opinion, it hasn't really landed the way I think it was meant to.
I don't know. I think it has done what they wanted to. I do believe that rivalries have started. I think Toronto Tampa is a much more fierce rivalry than it's ever been. And it's because they played those back-to-back seasons. It's because, they're really, really physical matchups. And, Toronto got the best of Tampa one year and Tampa got the best of Toronto the next. Like they're tied 1-1. We'll see if we get, part 3 of the trilogy at some point here in the next couple of years. As of now, that would actually be the round 1 matchup. It would be Toronto Tampa round 1 as of this moment. See, Ottawa's in a playoff spot now. They got 32 points.
They finally have a 3-game win streak.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, Ottawa in the playoffs right now at the second wild card spot. So, hey, my dream is still alive. We could still see, or my bold prediction still alive. We could still see Leafs Sens in round 1 of the playoffs. That is still very much in play, and that would be nice, though. No, wouldn't it be good if we instead of seeing the old Boston and Tampa or Florida, it'd be nice. I guess Ottawa could be a nice little change of pace.
Oh, it'd be fantastic for both markets.
Again,
different. You get a real rivalry, right? The biggest rivalry we've had, in the playoffs during those 2000s, right? That was the Battle of Ontario.
We were growing up. The Battle of Ontario.
That was that was the playoff rivalry when we were growing up. How many years Leafs Sens? At least then, that point,
year for like 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I understand maybe if for some Leafs fans.
But why are you okay with that happening every 4 years? It seemed like, but you're not okay with them playing.
But it wasn't always round 1. It was kind of always different. Or, I mean, but again, there was a built-up hatred and rivalry with those two. Right.
Well, I think it stemmed from playoffs, right? And I mean, the Battle of Ontario, I guess, gives you like a geographical thing also. But I think that's what the NHL was hoping for at the very least when they switched it to like divisional for the first 2 rounds. But I think I would be okay with them going back to the 1v8, but I don't know if I want them adding teams. Like I think that's what everyone else has done, right? The NHL or the MLB added extra wild card team. The NBA added 2 extra wild card teams. And they've got that play-in tournament thing, and then the NFL had an extra wild card team. So like the other sports are adding teams to their playoffs, which is adding games, which is adding revenue. So you can think about it that way. You're adding revenue, and if you want to see the cap rise, if you continue to do things that add revenue, whether it's adding extra regular season games, adding extra playoff teams, adding an extra round, however it may be, it makes sense that other leagues are going into that direction. It doesn't feel like the NHL wants to, though. And I kind of like the fact that, we've got 32 teams, 16 teams make the playoffs, 16 teams miss the playoffs. To me, it's actually kind of a perfect number. 50% of the league is going to make it, 50% of the league is not. I think it actually works out pretty well. Now, the format, once you get into the dance, whether it's divisional or it's 1v8 or 1v16, or you go and you do what the PWHL did, where you pick your opponent, that would be interesting. Would I be open to, some sort of change when it comes to that? Sure. But I do like the 16-team playoff format more than I do the NBA's. Well, yeah, 20 teams make the playoffs, 20 out of 30 teams. It just completely cheapens the regular season. It's like, if 2/3 of your league is making the playoffs, like what the hell is the point? Just have a playoff. Like, and then you get the in-season, regular season tournament thing with the NBA too.
Like that. That's me. If someone brought that up for the NHL, no,
it means nothing to me.
Yeah, it's just
absolutely nothing.
It doesn't prove. Yeah, like that one there. It's just like, I understand that it brings a little bit of flavor to like the end of the year. Okay, fine, but for the NHL, it just doesn't work because there could be such a discrepancy between the 8th and 9th seed. Like you weren't good enough to be the 8th seed. Like all of a sudden now, all I'll have to just wait for is a 1-game playoff to determine if I make it to the playoffs, and the other team, maybe that's been like far and ahead above me. I mean, at the same time, if you're good enough to be in the playoffs, you should be good enough to beat any team as well.
Yeah,
like at that point too. But yeah, I just think I have no issues with the divisional way in terms of making the playoffs. I think the way it determines the matchups, I'm not a favor of.
Yeah. All right. So we'll see if any changes come about. I don't expect it to anytime soon. As you mentioned, Bill Daly and old Gary Bettman seem to be pretty stubborn and stuck on making this format work. But everyone else around the sports world, they're making changes and finding ways to generate new revenues. Possibly could be something the NHL does at some point, but not anytime soon, obviously. All right. On the other side, we got a little bit of Leafs news. Fraser Minten sent down to the minors. Why is the question? Because there was no follow-up move that came along with it. And we're going to play some cosign, no sign as well. So fun show coming up. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. Stay with us here in the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
Today's episode is sponsored by Bilt Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Bilt, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent comes with serious perks, and it's completely free to join. Earn valuable Bilt points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. Redeem points for flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments with over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their programs. The possibilities are endless. Access unique experiences that are exclusive to Bilt members. I love using points for travel, and Bilt makes it easy to turn rent into rewards. If you're already paying rent, why not make it work for you? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNHL. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNHL. Make sure to use our links so they know we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Select Quote. The World Series, Super Bowl, the Olympics, the Stanley Cup playoffs. The world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are a perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safe for your family's end zone. Select Quote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Other life insurance brokers are impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less, while Select Quote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. You invest so much time to take care of yourself and be the healthiest, best version that you can be. Select Quote's exclusive policies can reward that effort. Head to selectquote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. Select Quote, they shop, you save. Get the right insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. Go to selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL today to get started. That's selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. It's all Leafs all the time here on the podcast, free and available wherever you get a podcast and also up on YouTube as well. So the Maple Leafs woke up to some news here on Tuesday. The Leafs have sent down Fraser Minten, their second round pick a couple of years ago. Had a little cup of coffee last season, little 4-game foray in the NHL. Got called up with the injuries when they started to mount up in the forward group earlier this season. Ended up getting in 11 games here, Dave. 2 goals, 2 assists in that time. But he was sent back down to the American Hockey League today. Says the Maple Leafs, they put out a statement. What are your thoughts when you saw that? Did you think that Minten, deserved to be sent down? Like, what went through your head when you saw that news?
Yeah, I don't think Minten deserved necessarily to be sent down. Maybe this is a case where we're not expecting anyone back anytime soon, right? I think David Kampf is a little ways away, which usually means he's far away from returning.
But he's
If
been
it's
skating though. Like he was
yeah.
skating last week. I would imagine he continue to skate throughout
Well,
the
he's past his
weekend.
LTIR period. I think it's he's skating, but for Brewery to say he's not close would kind of suggest that.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't think. Yeah, there's no one else really coming back. I don't think like Hakanpaa, like they're trying to make room to add another defenseman because they would just send a defenseman down or something like that. So I think this is more so potentially, with the roster freeze coming up, this could be just a paper transaction, or we saw that line of Minten, McMahon, and Robertson look pretty good against the Sabres. Maybe like we'll give that a shot, and we'll let Fraser Minten go back to the Marlies and play more significant minutes. Now,
Yeah, McMahon,
sorry,
Domi, and Robertson.
yeah, like I do think this is just an opportunity for Minten to just go down and play. Go down if they feel like they're not going to be playing him, send them down. Right, just let them go and play with the Marlies.
Yeah, and I think that probably was the situation there because there was no corresponding move to call anybody up. And unless they activate someone off of IR and utilize that roster spot, it is a little bit head scratching. It almost looks the part as if maybe it's a paper move transaction. But, I was looking into the numbers too, Dave. I think that the underlying numbers at least aren't as glowing as you would think they are. Like, I didn't feel like Fraser Minten was, terrible out there, but the numbers aren't that great. He was, they had a 57% goal share while he was out there on the ice, but expected goals, just 40% expected goal share when he was on the ice this year. He was outchanced and outshot and had just a 45% success rate in the faceoff dot. So it is possible that, the 20-year-old wasn't ready for the NHL, and he still has some things to learn. Was he absolutely swimming out there? No, I don't think so. I still think that eventually he's going to be a really good third line center for the Maple Leafs and in the NHL. And I don't think it'll be that long either. Like I could see him now that he knows what it takes. He got a really good taste. Like last year, that cup of coffee, 4 games. What can you really learn? But like he was around the team for like the better part of a month. He got into 11 games. You can learn a lot in those 11 games. Now you go down to the American League, and that's where you can really develop and focus on certain aspects of your game that at the next level you've got to get better at. And you could do that in the American League. You can't do that at the NHL. The NHL is not a developmental league. You
No.
got to be developed once you get there. So, that's the type of things I think the Leafs are looking at here. Like, hey, there's some stuff we liked, but there's some stuff that we didn't. And now we know exactly what parts of your game need a little seasoning. When you go down to the minors, to the American League, this is what you need to work on. And how many times have we seen players, come up to the NHL from the AHL, and they play okay, they play well, but then they go down to the American League and then they pop off because the game has just come so much simpler and it's not as quick, and they can just do what they need to do down there that they were unable to do at the NHL, and then they start to pop off. I can see that being the case with Fraser Minten. I would imagine that he goes on a little bit of a tear down in the American League.
Yeah, no, I think that with young players, you got to just be careful that they don't develop, habits maybe that aren't proper for their development.
Yeah, he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that would, though. Like
He
pretty,
hasn't. I just think you don't want him to be overwhelmed too, right? So I do think that this makes sense to just give him a chance to go and play. Maybe he could get his offensive games back up a little bit. He did pretty well. He has good offensive instincts, but again, they just have such a logjam at forward right now that it just makes sense to just make I'd rather him just play in the Marlies. I don't want to see him be a scratch and then just sitting in the press box. It'd be such a waste, especially if they're not playing. If they're going to be playing Ryan Reeves and Pontus Holmberg, if they feel those guys are more deserving of those fourth line minutes, then just send Minten down.
It's not even like a more deserving thing. Some of it too is just contractual, right? Where it's like Minten doesn't require waivers. Robinson requires waivers. Holmberg requires waivers. Reeves requires waivers. And, it's just an easier deal to send Minten down as opposed to any of those other players. And as guys get healthy, they got to start making some pretty tough roster decisions. And one of the easy ones, I guess you could make, is sending down the 20-year-old kid who still needs a little bit of seasoning in the American League. And, you're not going to lose any of your depth. Like they already lost Dakota Mermies when they had to send someone off waivers. He got picked off by Seattle. So we're back to that shenanigans again, where everyone's taking all the Maple Leafs off the waiver wire.
Yeah.
So maybe they don't want to go down that road quite yet if they don't need to. So Minten allows them to get an extra body back in there and not have to risk, putting anyone on waivers and risk them getting claimed. So I'm sure that has something to do with it as well. But good luck to Fraser Minten. I'm sure. I think he'll be back. I believe so. Like we're about to play some cosign no sign. So here's a quick little cosign no sign for you, Dave. Fraser Minten will play at least one game for the Maple Leafs in the playoffs this year.
Cosign.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially if they don't find a 3C that's to their liking, or injuries. He'll be the first guy anyway. So I agree on that.
I agree with you as well. All right, we'll continue to play some cosign no sign on the other side. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NHL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NHL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Network. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you. We're going to play some cosign no sign. I think it's been a couple of weeks since we've played this. It's been a pretty jam-packed schedule from a games perspective. So there's been a lot of previews and recaps and all that. So we haven't had too many off days where we've been able to, jam in a cosign no sign. But today felt like a perfect day with the Leafs. It was an off day yesterday. They got a practice going on later today. And then on tomorrow's show, we'll preview and set up Stars Leafs. That'll be tomorrow night. So it's a perfect time to fit in a cosign no sign. If you're new to the podcast, the way that this segment works is Dave and I, we're going to basically have a take that we have, and we're going to tell each other. We're going to make a statement. If we agree with it, we co-sign it. If we disagree with it, we're going to no sign it and state why. So it's a pretty simple premise, pretty simple concept. Dave, what you got for me today?
The Leafs should be starting contract negotiations with John Tavares now. Push for it. Get it done.
Why? Sell me on it.
Well, it's not going to get any cheaper at this rate. And I think if you're looking at, he's a player right now that I think wants to stay in Toronto. He's made it clear he wants to stay in Toronto. So, yeah, maybe some people feel like they don't need to make that push. But you know what? Show him that he's a bit of a priority, too, to come back. Right? There's a lot of talk about Marner. Nice, he's an RFA. Like, that's the one there where you maybe can wait a bit. Unless you feel like you just got to get that deal done before it gets too expensive. But I would figure out a little bit of what you have to work with in the off season, right? They went and they did the Jake McCabe deal, probably for that reason, right? Get another defender signed, so you now know our blue line is pretty much locked in going forward. I'd like to see the Leafs say, we want to get a player who has done everything that's probably been asked of him and more so, and he's producing very well. And you know what? Just say, what is it going to... I don't say you have to sign him now, but find out what it's going to take. What?
Oh, if that's it, where it's like you put in the call and you're like, hey, like, what's this guy looking for? Then yeah, I'll co-sign that. But am I actively trying to get him signed to a deal? Am I going to, really get into the nitty-gritty of negotiations? I don't know if I'd be willing to do that. Like you say, it's only going to get more expensive. I don't know if that's true. Like we're 30 games into the season, right?
Mhm.
For a player who's at the age that John Tavares is, it's possible that the game could still fall off in the back half of the year, right? When the body takes a little bit more of a toll. So like, do you really want to do that? And what happens if the team again flames out in the first round? You want to bring back all the troops? Like, I think there's so much still that you kinda need to find out about this team come playoff time. Like, yes, he's played really he's exceeded expectations this year. He's got 28 points on the season. He's got 15 goals in 30 games. Like, that's incredible. That's a 40-goal pace. He hasn't done that since his first season with the Maple Leafs. He's been incredible. But can he continue to do it all year long? That's the question, and I would rather wait and find out and see what it looks like come playoff time before I lock in one of those big 4, big 5 pieces to a contract. I'd like to see where things are at in by the end of the season and how this team is kind of meshing together. And I personally would honestly put Tavares like behind Marner and behind Nyes when it comes to prioritizing a new contract. So like, yeah, you make the call to find out what it'll take, but ultimately, I'm not going to be um, eager, I guess, to negotiate and go with the back and forth until I find out more about the season, how things kind of unfold.
That's fair. I just think, you know what, I like to have that, to know that they're not putting it off too long, because I think center looking at the center market too, you just don't want to be in a position where you see him walk out the door.
Yeah.
I don't either. So I think that's something.
Yeah, but how long is he going to be a center for? Like we've already talked about the last couple of years, moving him over to the wing. Would he be better on the wing? Like when they brought Ryan O'Reilly in that year, like they kind of shoved him over to the wing. So like, is he going to be a center for the next 2, 3 years? I don't know. I don't think so. To be honest with you, Stamkos already got moved off of the middle of the ice.
Yeah, but that was happening. But that's because he's a pure sniper. Or what didn't have the other attributes as a center. Tavares at least does. Really good at the
Yeah,
face-offs. Right, he's very strong on the puck and things like that.
he's so
I think
skate well enough to be a center. Is I think the question.
well, maybe as a top 6 down the road, probably not. But we're talking also the potential of making him a 3C down the road,
Yeah.
right? So that's
Well,
the
what's
other
that
thing.
going to cost? How much are you going to pay your 3C?
I mean, if let's say they had brought in Ryan O'Reilly, what would that have cost them, right?
Well,
Like
I guess
4
4 million. I
4.5.
guess.
It's probably what you have to pay. Like a 3Cs are not going cheap. Centers are not going cheap generally, but 3Cs are not. Like they're not making $2 million. They're making $3-4 million now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially with the cap going up. Centers are gonna. Those are the guys that get paid more.
Agreed. Agreed. But is he a center? That's the question. But we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. All right. Cosign, no sign. Nick Robertson will not finish the season as a Toronto Maple Leaf. He's coming off probably the best game he's played of the season the other night against Buffalo. Had a really nice assist on the Domi goal to set it up and then scored one himself. But it's just 3 goals on the year for a player who's really calling card his goal scoring. Spent a lot of nights up in the press box already. I think the Nick Robertson era will be coming to an end here soon in Toronto. So he will not finish the season as a Maple Leaf.
I,
Cosign, no sign.
I'll co-sign that one because he hasn't been able to stay consistently in the lineup. This team has desperately needed depth scoring. He is that player that should be providing that depth scoring. and he hasn't done it. Like, he hasn't done it. I can understand in the past they weren't really giving him the opportunities. He's been getting opportunities. Now, maybe this next stretch here could potentially offer a chance for him to do that, but I just think that they have more needs on this team. They need to get a bit bigger too. They need to find guys that are going to bring a little more. Like, I don't know if I can trust him in the playoffs to play the style that's needed if he's going to be able to contribute against those top. Like, he played well against Buffalo. Like, I want to see him play better against teams that you're expected to play in the playoffs, right?
A team that has lost 10 games in a row.
Yeah. Let me see. Yeah, against Devin Levi, who was just called up and making his just wasn't even expected the player start, and they just called him up because they
can't get a save from anyone else.
Yeah. So, like, they're gonna play Dallas this week. Let's see how he does against Dallas. Can he produce right?
He got hurt against Dallas a couple of years ago, and isn't that where he had a shoulder injury? I remember I was in the building covering the game.
And he had that overtime winner thing against Dallas too.
Yeah, against his brother. Him and his brother were going mano a mano.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But I wonder too the fact that he's being given an opportunity to play with like Domi and McMahon, right? Like, that's kind of I don't know, it's a bit of a scoring line. Like, I think that's like a top 9 scoring line as opposed to like a third line scoring line as opposed to a third line checking line, obviously. Almost feels like it could be a situation where the Leafs are showcasing a Nick Robertson in a way. And that's why they're like, yeah, we'll put Domi in there because he'll create more offense than Fraser Minten. And maybe that helps get Nick Robertson going. Scores a couple of goals. Maybe a couple teams get a little more interested in a Robertson deal. And we make a pick for whatever, 3rd, 4th, 5th rounder. And just kind of wipe our hands. And Robertson, wish you luck. Best of luck, bud. And kind of ends his tenure here as a Maple Leaf. I could see that being the case, and kind of why we're seeing maybe the Fraser Minten situation unfold the way it did, and Domi providing just a bit more offense to that line, which in theory should help Nick Robertson do what he has to do to be successful too.
Yeah, I do think I have no problem. They want to try to get a team to bite a bit and be like, here's a guy who can score. You need a scorer. Here's a guy who can score. If you put him in the right situations, but I think some teams are also going to say, well, this is also a guy that only has 3 goals right on the year. How much can we really expect him to score? So I do think that you can. I know some people are like, oh, you allowed what a wasted opportunity, wasted chance with the Nick Robertson. But you know what? New regimes. This is what happens when you bring in new people. Old players that were part of the old regime get pushed out. I give Brad Treliving credit for not just throwing away Nick Robertson at this point, because he probably could have done that a while back.
Yeah.
He's at least been patient with it, and he's sticking with it. So if he moves off from Nick Robertson, I won't be that upset about it because they tried, didn't work. Right. At least they gave it a real honest chance. Because at other times, we've seen other players get thrown out the door here, and they become pretty decent contributers.
Yeah, Mason Marchment, Trevor Moore,
Carter Verhaeghe,
Carter Verhaeghe, exactly. Sean Dursey. There's a lot of guys who've gone on to play well. The last regime was quick to move on from for whatever reason. But yeah, again, Robertson coming off a really good game, so hopefully it can spark something going forward. We'll see what he looks like tomorrow night in Dallas. All right, buddy. I think that will probably put a close to the cosign, no sign segment. I did want to mention this because I was going to bring up another one. You know how many goals Zach Hyman has scored in his last 6 games since being snubbed from Team Canada?
Oh, dude has been on fire.
Dude, so he had just 3 goals in his first 20 games. Team Canada gets announced. He's not on the team. Since then, 7 goals his last 6 games. On fuego.
And he was hurt too, so he's back from injury. So I probably wasn't too healthy. Like, he wasn't. I think we're finding that the middle ground for him right now. Like, he wasn't a 50 goal scorer, He's also not like a guy who's going to score 15 goals. He can score 25 to 30 goals.
Yeah.
That's what Zach Hyman is. So I think we're starting to see him getting back. I think the health was a big part of that reason for him getting back to being a good player again.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think he probably would be one of the top replacement players if the Canadian team gets to a point where there's an injury and they have to get a replacement. I think Hyman, what he's been able to do since the announcement, might be up at the tippy top of that list. I would co-sign that one. I don't know about you, but I certainly would.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I thank you. I'd like to thank you guys for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. We'll be teeing up Leafs and Stars on tomorrow's episode. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.